Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. I want to make sure we're not getting any, no, I don't think we're getting any echo. I don't know. So welcome. Great to have you here. And like I said, good evening. Unless, of course, you are on the other side of the world, in which we have Vino with us. Great to have you from Australia, right? And so thank you for being here with us. As you can tell, life's been busy. I haven't had time for a haircut. If you would like to see me get a haircut, you can donate to markbazeministries.org. And I really appreciate each and every one of you. All right, now, we are going to be largely one-minded tonight, okay? In tonight's episode, I have one primary goal, but we're all going to tie this together. Back in the day when I did a lot of these episodes of Shields and Arrows, I often found a way to take whatever current events going on, often in politics, and draw a connection in theology. I'm going to do that again, okay? Because I think what Pete Hegseth had to say about his military address at Quantico, really, really good. If you haven't seen it yet, it was quite encouraging. I just thought it was excellent. Can't say enough good things. Pete Hegseth impresses me in a number of ways. The Secretary of War, by the way, not Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War. Now, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the military. I think it's a good thing that the United States has a good, strong military. And then we're going to go into the relationship that exists between the point he was making and the reality that goes on in churches. I'm working on making sure I'm very careful in how I speak. I want you to understand where I'm coming from here, what I'm trying to say. So, I want to show you a video. I thought this was really, really good. At Quantico, it's in Virginia, I believe, correct, everyone? And so started to hear an ad there. I'll let the ad run. And we're going to listen to a little bit of what Hegseth had to say. Now, I think this was on Friday of last week, but just really, really good. It's going to kind of jump through a little bit here, some of the things that he has to say. But listen to it because it's going to give you a good understanding of where I'm going to be going with this, all right? So let's go ahead and enjoy listening to what he has to say on this matter.
Please take your seats. It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And that's why today at my direction, the era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos. The era of rampant and ridiculous shaving profiles is done. Simply put, if you do not meet the male-level physical standards for combat positions, cannot pass a PT test, or don't want to shave and look professional, it's time for a new position or a new profession. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result, so be it. I'm issuing new policies that will overhaul the IG, EO, and MEO processes. I call it the no more walking on eggshells policy. We are liberating commanders and NCOs. We are liberating you. We are overhauling an inspector general process, the IG, that has been weaponized, putting complainers, ideologues, and poor performers in the driver's seat. We're doing the same with the equal opportunity and military equal opportunity policies, the EO and MEO at our department. No more frivolous complaints, no more anonymous complaints, no more repeat complainants, No more smearing reputations, no more endless waiting, no more legal limbo, no more sidetracking careers, no more walking on eggshells. At the War Department, promotions across the Joint Force will be based on one thing: merit. Colorblind, gender-neutral, merit-based. The entire promotion process, including evaluations of warfighting capabilities, is being thoroughly re-examined. We've already done a lot in this area, but more changes are coming soon. I have fired a number of senior officers since taking over. The previous chairman, other members of the Joint Chiefs, combatant commanders, and other commanders. The rationale for me has been straightforward. It's nearly impossible to change a culture with the same people who helped create or even benefited from that culture, even if that culture was created by a previous president and previous secretary. My approach has been simple. When in doubt, assess the situation, follow your gut, and if it's the best for the military, make a change. We all serve at the pleasure of the president every single day. We are preparing every day. We have to be prepared for war, not for defense. We're training warriors, not defenders. We fight wars to win, not to defend. Defense is something you do all the time. It's inherently reactionary and can lead to overuse, overreach, and mission creep. War is something you do sparingly, on our own terms, and with clear aims. We fight to win. Well, today is another Liberation Day. The liberation of America's warriors, in name, in deed, and in authorities. You kill people and break things for a living. You are not politically correct and don't necessarily belong always in polite society. President Trump has your back, and so do I. And you'll hear from him shortly.
All right, so I just thought that was excellent coming from Pete Hegseth. There's a few things he said in there that I didn't agree with, mostly just the part about if a woman is able to pass the physical standards, then she can serve in a combat role. I've been very clear on this. I think it is morally wrong for women to serve in a combat role. So I would say it doesn't matter if you had a woman who was physically exceptional. She still should not be in a combat position. That's not their job. That's not their role. But overall, though, I thought Pete Hegseth did just an outstanding job. And the whole point of it was, we are not going to be inclusive. That is not the objective. The objective is to win wars. It's to wage war. It's to be war fighters. And so I thought that every word that he had to say there was really, really good, minus the one part about women in combat. And he also said a few other things. He mentioned diversity is not our strength. And that's absolutely true as well. One of the things that you heard constantly under the Biden administration, diversity is our strength, diversity is our strength. The idea that we are better off, the military is better off, our country is better off being more diverse. That is not true. Now, my words can be twisted here. It can be twisted to say that this is racially motivated. That's not at all where I'm coming from, because the reality is I have a whole lot more in common with, let's say, a member of the Choctaw Nation who is a right-dividing conservative, and I know some because they go to my church. I have much more in common with them than I do with apparently, according to the family tree, I've got a little bit of a Spaniard blood in me, all right? I've got a whole lot more in common with the Choctaw right divider than I do with the Spanish Catholic, all right? So we're not talking about, when we say diversity, I'm not talking about racial diversity here. When we talk about even the military, Pete Hegseth isn't even addressing the matter of racial diversity. What he's saying is there is a standard. There is a standard that is to be physically met. He addressed that. No fat troops, no fat generals, commanding officers, but also professionalism, how you present yourself. He addressed the matter of beards. And I know that, we've got some amazing portraits of Civil War generals and colonels and things like that, but he has a policy. You're going to look professional. You're going to look the part. You're going to act the part. That's the objective. That's the goal. It's not to have a diverse number of troops. So why would having one troop or one soldier who has one appearance be beneficial as compared to this unified uniform, this unified protocol, this unified appearance? We all know it. When it comes to war fighting, you are not a bunch of unique, special individuals. You are a fighting machine. You are a part of the war machine. You are a unit. All right. I haven't served, but I've talked to a number of those who have served, and I think that they would probably say, yeah, that's the idea. You are not an individual. You are a part of the United States military. And so really am encouraged by that. I have some high hopes for Pete Hegseth. I hope that we see him in politics for a good long time. Hopefully he continues to be the Secretary of War if J.D. Vance is president next term, or who knows, maybe even Pete Hegseth is sitting in the Oval Office one day. Really just have a lot of good things to say. This is a very good thing that we are finally acknowledging we do not need to have a diversity quota. We don't need to have an X number of black colonels. We don't need to have an X number of female colonels. What we need are people who are competent. As Rick said, unity is our strength. The very lines that Pete Hegseth used in his speech, and unfortunately I couldn't find the video that said everything I wanted him to say. He even addressed the matter of transgenderism, right? No men in dresses. But he also, he made that very clear. He said unity is our strength. You have to be unified in a common goal and a common purpose, all right? The military is not a place to find belonging. The military is the place to go to learn how to fight and kill bad guys, very simply. And as I reflect on the principles that he's laid out there, this is the perfect way to talk about church as well. Church is no place for inclusivity. Okay, I know that's a strange thing to say in these modern times, all right? The very title of the episode is Churches Should Not Be Inclusive. All right, churches should not be inclusive, and they shouldn't. This isn't about welcoming everybody in. That's not what the church is for, and I think that we've completely missed that when we look at Scripture. You, as individuals, and the church as well, can do the work of evangelizing, do the work of an evangelist, going and sharing the gospel message. But when it comes to the actual church, the congregating, the meeting together, this is not for everyone. It's just not. This is for the people who are either interested in learning, I'll open up the door that much, interested in learning the doctrine, exploring the doctrine of the church, but specifically those who hold to the doctrine of the church. And what do we see in modern time? It's the exact opposite of that. Churches really have bought into the idea that diversity is our strength. And they'll throw in all of the they'll throw in the racial aspect as well. That's a big thing, like with those of former times, David Platt, Francis Chan. I think they're waning in their influence because people are starting to see them for what they really are. But they made the big push on that. We need, why are our churches segregated? We need to have diverse churches, and not a black church, not a white church, but a red church, right? Sounds like Barack Obama a little bit, some of his lines. They've taken this to they've taken that mindset, diversity being our strength, to really every single portion of the church. So here's another one. Churches are now diverse in political ideology, all right? So churches are not conservative churches anymore and liberal churches. They are this hodgepodge. They are this melting pot of church members who do not hold to the same political views. And that has a major impact on your worldview as well. I mean, what do you believe about the world? And also that does say a lot about your theology. And a diverse doctrinal view, a diverse theology will lead to diverse political opinions, positions, convictions, you name it. And that's what we've got. So the diverse political aspect of churches, because on one pew you're going to have, let's say, a pretty conservative guy, pro-life, against socialist ideologies, you name it. And then on the next pew you may have a person who is pro-choice. They may even be a little bit laxed on gay marriage, right? Their defense of traditional marriage. They may be in favor of open borders, sanctuary cities, anti-ICE sentiments, the like. You name it. So there is great diversity in churches when it comes to political ideology, and then of course you get into the doctrinal portion of it, the doctrinal aspect. So, for example, Baptist churches, let's take First Baptist Durant. First Baptist Durant, I know for a fact, is a very much mixed congregation. The pastor is a Calvinist, but he kind of keeps that close to the chest. He doesn't tell his congregation that. The congregation is a mix of some Calvinists who are kind of the ones that are rising to power, getting ready to, run roughshod over things. And then you have probably the longtime members, the faithful members, who are largely good old evangelicals, but conservatives to a large degree. But they have they're very diverse in doctrine, all right? So they have no unity in doctrine. They're inclusive, okay? Anybody can go to First Baptist Durant, and they're largely not going to be offended, all right? They're not going to be upset about anything because they have desired to make themselves inclusive. And hey, I guess it's played to their benefit. They've got the nice big fancy student center. They've got the electronic sign out front. And by electronic, I don't mean it shines at night because there's a light bulb behind the plastic. It's got the fancy running screen that they can put up all sorts of pictures and neat stuff. So hey, inclusivity's working for you in order to capture all these diverse people. But what do you sacrifice? So for the military, going back to Pete Hegseth and the case he was making, they pursued diversity but sacrificed military readiness, military preparedness. They sacrificed the physical standard, all right? So you watered down the physical testing, and now your soldiers are weaker. Now you have women who are serving in positions that they have no business serving in. So you're going to give up something. There is no free lunch in life, all right? So take the church that says we are not going to sacrifice doctrine. Would be our church, right? Other churches, Dr. White's church. And so when you say, I'm not going to budge on doctrine, you're naturally going to be exclusive. You're not going to be diverse. Now, once again, when I say diverse, once the Democratic Party, liberals, you name it, the progressivists, they have kind of taken that word diverse and applied it to racial matters, ethnic matters. But when I say diverse, I'm talking about theological views, okay? So when you go into our church, the vast majority of people are all going to be using a King James Bible, all right? Because they have a very united position on the preservation of God's Word and the majority Byzantine family of manuscripts, all right? They're going to hold to that position. So guess what? You have somebody who likes the ESV or the NIV or whatever other modern version. Yeah, you may not get those people. They may not stick around because they don't like it when you say that the King James Bible is better than whatever Bible they have. All right? And so you're not going to have the big budgets. Now, that's not to say you can't grow a church, you can't see success, and we're seeing exciting things at Blue. I'm very thankful to say for the past 4 Sundays in a row, I've had a new guest, a new couple show up. And so it's been very good. Of course, and right now, the late summer, early fall is kind of prime time for churches in Oklahoma. And probably a lot of other churches as well, because people are getting back to a routine. The kids are in school, they're done vacationing, things like that. But nonetheless, we're seeing some good success. But I guarantee you, if we were a much more inclusive congregation, you would appeal to a broader range of people. But the question that Pete Hegseth dared to ask, or really the truth that he dared to proclaim, we need to do so in churches as well. He confidently proclaimed that diversity is not our strength. Unity is our strength. I want churches to realize that as well. I would love for every church to be a rightly dividing King James Bible using church. I mean, I would love that. That would be excellent. But I would at least settle for every single church to be inclusive on their doctrine. I think the non-denominational, ecumenical, inclusive churches have done a lot of damage because it's dumbed us down, okay? It has absolutely dumbed us down. When you decide you're not going to teach doctrine, you're kind of just not going to be teaching the Bible. A great example, a very telltale sign, is eschatology. That is really, I think, the key metric. If a church has eschatology, an actual view of the last days, whatever that view is, it at least means they have studied their Bible. Now, maybe they've studied it poorly, improperly, not rightly divided, not contextually. They came to the conclusion of the post-millennial view that the kingdom is more so us building the kingdom through evangelizing and the world becoming the majority Christian, and so that'll go on for 1,000 years and Christ will come. But at the very least, they have realized, yeah, we need to have a view on the last days because the Bible is very clear. It's very explicit that there will be key events that take place in the last days. And Christ talks about it in the Gospels. The prophets talk about it in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, as we should probably call them, because that's more accurate to what they really are. They are the Hebrew Scriptures. So if a church has eschatology, that is at least a sign that they are somewhat focused on unity as opposed to diversity. If I talk to a pastor and he has no eschatology, he has no opinion on it, that is a clear red flag that this man has not studied his Bible. Because you cannot do verse-by-verse Bible study. You can't even casually read the Bible and avoid the subject of the last days. It is just screaming at you from almost every single book, almost every single one. Even take, little 3-chapter Titus talks about the last days. And so it's unavoidable. If you're going to study the Bible, you have to be willing to address it. You've got to be willing to tackle it. So, when we think about a church that is the equivalent to what the military was under Biden, it's all about diversity. And so, when you're diverse, you can only be united on the most bare-bone basic things. When I think about the soldiers who were serving under Biden, what was their unity? What was keeping them together? Okay, yes, they made their oath to defend the United States. They donned the uniform. But really, what do they stand for? What even United States do they stand? Do they stand for the United States of capitalism, of the free market, of the borders and U.S. citizens? Are you defending U.S. citizens, people who share a common language, a common history? Or are you fighting for a United States in which you hope to see it become more like, I don't know, France or Britain? Do you desire to fight to defend those rights acknowledged, addressed, listed in the Constitution? Or maybe are you fighting because you're hoping to get a paycheck and you don't really have much conviction about that? Now, the truth is, the vast majority of the soldiers fighting, and I'm even going to try to draw a parallel here as well, most soldiers are conservative. Most come from the South. I still believe that's true. I know that was true back in the day, but I think for the most part, most of those who serve do come out of Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, those southern states. And so they're going to be naturally more conservative. But the issue is the people that are getting promoted because there's a diversity quota, they're the ones in charge. They're the ones that are getting the office jobs. They're the ones that are being promoted to colonel or sergeant, what have you. I really do believe this, and maybe I'll be proven wrong one of these days. I think that most people in the pew, okay? Most people in the pew want you to defend. I would dare say, I think the average man in the pew who has not been indoctrinated with covenant Calvinist doctrine wants you to defend a dispensational theology, because that is what they were brought up with. That is what makes sense when they read their Bible. But the preachers who get to power, get to position, they've been trained by the seminaries, what have you, other preachers, to be very, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word I'm looking for here. It's not political, but I guess that's a good way to use it, to use. And maybe you can think of the term I'm trying to look for. Be a people pleaser. Please everybody. Be non-controversial. Avoid, there's certain no-go zones. And you'll be able to have success and everybody will be on your side. And so yeah, non-confrontational, non-controversial. There's a number of terms I could use, but they've been trained, they've been taught, hey, here's how you get out of a tricky situation. If somebody asks you a tough question, for example, the classic question, somebody asks a preacher, what's the best Bible version? What's the one you'll read, right? It's political. It's such a political answer, right? You're skirting around it. You're not honestly answering it. You're just trying to avoid. Or even if you were so far to say, well, I kind of like the New American Standard, or I kind of like the ESV. I mean, I enjoy reading the King James sometimes. They just know how to play the game. And I'll remind you of the story of me being a young pastor, getting in touch with an older gentleman who was a pastor in the area, in Tulsa area. And he told me, basically, I've got to get out of that little country church. I've got to start going golfing with the pastors of the First Baptist big towns, Jenks, Bixby, Broken Arrow, people like that. And if I get in touch with them, they'll get me in connection with some of these churches, and I can start climbing the ladder. And who knows, if I would have followed their advice, who knows where I would be right now. But I know their practice. Their practice is to be inclusive. In order for them to pastor those big churches, you have to be inclusive. You have to be diverse. Because if you want the big crowds, you need to have the broad net. You cannot be focused on unity. Now, they'll say they are, but what are they united on? They're united on the most basic thing. Just teach Jesus, just focus on the gospel. Half the time they have the gospel somewhat confused too. They'll focus so much on repentance, and they'll just about make it a work. We need to stop being inclusive, and we need to realize that unity is our strength. A church that is made up of 30 people, all right? 30 people counting every dog and cat in the house. If they all agree on a single Bible translation, this is our authoritative Bible. This is the preserved word. I'm being so generous as to not even just limit it to right division. Let's just talk about just a church that is agreeing on doctrine. They have a united view on their soteriology, their doctrine of salvation. Every single one of them that's in that church agree on salvation, and probably if they were to describe it in words, it would all be very similar from one person to the next, very minute, insignificant differences. They all have the same eschatology. That little church will still be here in 30 years. All right? In 30 years, they'll still be plugging right along. Maybe even growing a little bit, because the dog had puppies. The non-denominational church that has a cool name, these things, I'm sorry, I just now realized I don't know if my children got a hold of me or what. So unprofessional. My jacket was dirty. Nobody said anything. So I'm just looking silly sitting over here. But the non-denominational churches, they pop up out of nowhere. They have all these people come. And what are they united on? When I think about Scripture, I think about Philippians chapter 2. I think this is a key verse here, key passage. If there be therefore any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels and mercies, consolation in Christ, comfort of love, fellowship of the Spirit, bowels and mercies, fulfill ye my joy, that ye be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. I think when you share a doctrinal view with somebody, when you share a common theology with someone, that there is a natural bond there. There's a love for them. To see someone who is eye to eye with you on this issue, they agree with you. You have the same approach, the same mentality towards this given subject. They read the same Bible as you. They have the same hope as you. That's a very powerful thing. The bond of a right dividing church is not easily broken. So, if the church needs remodeled, I would imagine that church is going to make it through. If they needed to change their meeting time from 11 to 10:45, I think they're going to make it through. If the preacher steps down, I think they're going to make it through, probably because they have another young man who's already been trained up by the preacher who can step in and do the job. They're going to make it. Because their unity is based upon something so much deeper than just what the building looks like, who the preacher is, what the service order and itinerary is like. For these churches that are trying to be inclusive, that's really what they've got. They don't have anything deeper than that. Okay, so they all believe in Jesus, even though they would have a lot of diverse views on what they believe about Him. So when the preacher retires, the building changes, the times change. Little things can cause a massive, massive ripple effect throughout the entire congregation. And there'll be some new church open up, and the next preacher down the road is more exciting, more dynamic. They've got this, they've got that, and some of these people will go right on down the way because, hey, it's not about the doctrine of what the church is teaching, it's the church experience. Lifeway right now is having their heyday. There'll be somebody else come along later that'll outshine Lifeway, and the Lifeway people will drift over to the next church. And eventually the cycle will repeat itself. And along the way, there'll be all different new Bible versions that'll be taught. Well, if there's much Bible teaching done at all. Because once again, if you teach the Bible too much, you might get too much into doctrine. And that's where you might start excluding some people. Churches need to be exclusive, not inclusive. The church that's united on doctrine will be so much stronger. They'll be more physically prepared, mentally prepared to defend doctrine, to share the gospel. How many of these churches are doing ministry so they believe they're feeding the homeless what have you, but they're not really sharing the gospel because they don't have any in-depth understanding of how to even present it or how to even share it. Another interesting thing to me is, the idea of what is shameful. For the military under Biden, how shameful it was for this to be a bunch of white men leading the charge. Who cares if they were competent? Who cares if they knew how to fight wars? Who cares if they were strong and physically fit? It's shameful. We need more people of color. We need more women. We need more this. We need more that. What a shameful thing. It's amazing how they get so mixed up on this. They were ashamed of the war fighters. But when they got rid of the war fighters and replaced them with their diversity quotas, and by diversity for them, they do mean ethnic or racial or gender, now they had an unequipped, unprepared military. And that is what is truly shameful. To have a fighting force unprepared to defend the country, that is a shameful thing. Churches are the same way. Evangelical churches think it is shameful if, as a Christian, you do not feed the able-bodied man who is just living off of handouts. How many churches are involved in this? I don't know what you even call it. I guess they would say charity. But is it really biblical charity? Because every time I saw the beggar, let's just use the example of the beggar in the Gospels. He was a lame man. He was a blind man. There was something about him that he was physically unfit, unable to provide for himself or his family. Yet churches will tell you that if you don't give something to just the homeless man, not that he's blind, not that he's lame, he's just homeless, that it's a shameful thing, that you are not being Christ-like. And yet they will go into their churches and not teach the Bible, and they will have the most surface, skin-deep level doctrine that you can imagine. They couldn't even articulate really what the kingdom is. They couldn't really articulate why Bible translations matter. They wouldn't even think Bible translations matter. They would expose themselves for their lack of knowledge. That is shameful. To be a man in your 30s and have no opinion on eschatology, and you've supposedly been studying the Bible for over a decade, that is shameful. Okay? And I don't say it to be mean. I'm just saying it to be honest. All right? That's a shameful thing. You cannot seriously read the Bible and come away with the mentality, all right, come away with the mentality that the last days are obscure and that they're really not that important. You're not seriously studying Scripture. You are inserting yourself in every passage, making it just some self-help devotional. That's what's shameful. We've got it all mixed around. It's shameful for churches to be inclusive. It's not what it's about. Church should be about the most exclusive thing there is. Once again, we would be much better off if there was the Acts 2 dispensational church, the covenant theology church, the Arminian, probably weak dispensational type church, and the right dividing church, instead of these doctrinally atrophied. Well, no, atrophy means you have it and then it's degenerated with time. Doctrinally absent would be a better term. These doctrinally absent churches that are just raking in the money and the numbers because a post-millennial feminist can attend the same church as a premillennial conservative truck driver. That's a problem. In a church, those two people should not be able to attend the same service together because their worldviews don't align. That's what we're trying to correct. This is what we need to fix. Let me read some of your comments here before I cut you loose on a late Tuesday night. Mary's with us. Rick, great to have you. Michaela here. Thank you, Michaela. Rick, of course. Already said that. Vino with us. So once again, thank you. Good morning, Vina, in Australia. We have Joyce and Robert. So good to see all of you. Really encouraging. Let's see here. Some of y'all having fun with Vina being from Australia. Robert says, I remember when ADM, Elmo, Zumwalt brought back beards in the U.S. Navy, Vietnam era. It's one of those things that I don't necessarily think that beards are wrong in the military, but you have to, if the Secretary of War is going to have his policy, then you follow the policy. Vina likes beards. You know, I've tried the beard. It's just red. It's just a red beard. If I was a pirate, they would call me Scraggly Red Beard. Ken says, if you're going to lead the military, look like you can kick some rear end. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's right. Paul says it's past his bedtime. Come on now, Paul. Jay says, wouldn't not promoting based on appearance contradict promotion by merit? Let me read that one more time, Jay, so I can contemplate what you're saying. Would not promoting based on appearance contradict promotion by merit? Is your point much simpler than I'm making this out to be, Jay? Maybe I'm a little bit off here. I mean, merit has nothing to do with your appearance as far as your skin color, your, I guess we could say gender. Once again, depends on combat role there. I'm going to put my foot on the ground and say, nope, we're not going to have women in combat roles. But you've got to meet the criteria. I mean, okay, what? If you're not going to have any standard on appearance, then what, are they going to wear their pajamas to work? So I think by appearance we just mean, are you following protocol? Are you in shape? Do you have clean cut? We're not worried about the rest. Do you wear your uniform as you're supposed to? Robert, I agree. We really need to stop checking boxes and go to merit-based. Absolutely. Ken's doing push-ups at night. That's great. Brian, I'll see you tomorrow at church as well. Randy White, Dr. White's here with us. Really appreciate you dropping in. I watched some Ask the Theologian while I was on the tractor today. Oh, Mary brought up the theological insomniac. I remember those days. Dr. White in the shed, right? Wasn't that where you did most of those? Out of the shed? Of course, it looked like your studio. A little bit of conversation between Robert and Dr. White. Ken says, I was thinking Clark Kent needs to shave. Can you see a little bit of stubble there? It's there a little bit. My son told me it was pokey. Vina wants a beard. Vina, I had a beard. I had a mustache for a little while. You can go back in the archives and see some of those. Ken says, you are so right. I'll spy on the live feed from our old church sometimes on Sunday. Makes me cringe. No foundational doctrine. Yeah. And you used to sit there and listen to it. Isn't that what's amazing? You used to sit there and you would listen. And you didn't necessarily perceive the problem. But now you do. And so those are my thoughts tonight. Churches should not be inclusive. hopefully that will be an eye-catching title. And who knows? Maybe I'll make that the title of a conference or something one of these days. That'd be kind of fun. Speaking of the conference, I'm working on getting it prepared for you. It's in the early phases, so don't ask too much. But we're going to be having our Spring Bible Conference. Want to see you there. We'll, of course, be live streaming it as well. And so, Ken said, who said I was listening? All right, everyone. Well, that's going to do it all for tonight. I appreciate you staying up late with me as I share my thoughts with you on these important matters. And I do think it's amazing how we see so much of what's going on in politics. At the same time, it does reflect the state of what churches are as well. I think there's a lot of carryover because I think everything is theological. Everything is based on that. So really appreciate all of you joining us here at Shields and Arrows tonight. We'll be, I'm going to try to be back tomorrow, but we'll for sure be going live with the Abraham study, okay? Thank you all very much.